Catus Maximus here. Shamefully went by Harbor Freight and I got these Doyles. These are the 8-inch flat nose assembly pliers. They are Taiwanese. Actually, in some of the testing videos and stuff, Doyle tools have shown themselves to actually be relatively worthy and durable. I will have to admit that. Just as I'll have to admit that having both Doyle and Quinn premium lines is just totally ridiculous and almost insane. They should have just had the Doyles. I did pick up these because I didn't have a set of pliers that particularly fit this bill. These are not duck bills because duck bills actually flare out some, but they are flat nose pliers. For me, they're real handy. I work on a lot of power tools, and so in many power tools, electrical connections are actually push fittings. And when you have needle nose, you're just gripping on a thin little portion, and the wire really wants to wiggle around quite a bit. So they're actually quite good for various electrical work just because you have a wider surface. You're getting more surface area on the wire, and you're not pinching and kinking the insulation on just by putting a bunch of pressure in a small area, and it's easier to push in these wires into the various terminals. About 15 bucks. They are pretty stiff. They do have pretty strong handles on them, decent forging, wide handles, so I have to admit that's not too bad. The rivet, at least initially here, is pretty decent. Definitely is pretty tight. I did look at a couple on packages on the shelf, and what I was finding out that there was some type of issue when they were cutting teeth in these. We can see that there is a halfway decent crosshatch pattern. Definitely offers a bit of grip, but some of them were either cut too deep or something was going on. But when I squeeze them in the package, you can see a little bit of that issue here where it's tight right there, and there's just a little bit of a gap, but it's not a big deal on this set. Some of the other pliers, there's actually quite a bit of gap where you close the handles and the tips just wouldn't quite come all the way through and maybe weren't ground quite symmetrically. So I looked through a couple packages until I could find a set that really looked pretty nice, and I did want to mention that. These are useful in a variety of situations as opposed to needle nose, because they can do a lot of things that needle nose do, but once again just giving you a bit wider of a surface area. They do have, actually the pivot's kind of far back. Many times the pivot will be even closer to the jaws. This is sort of a compromised position, so you do get quite a bit of jaw opening. Actually well more than enough for this style of pliers. Gives you a little bit more leverage, so not only do you get quite a bit of gripping strength, and the wide handles give you make it so you're not pinching your hand so much. It's just so that you don't have to squeeze quite so hard to get a particular level of grip. And I do wish they would have moved the rivet up just a little bit higher on these, because many situations, the advantage to these is the fact that the jaws don't open very far. That way you could, yeah, I guess that makes sense. That way you can get into tighter areas and be able to more easily grip things. And when you're trying to work with wiring connectors and stuff, and particularly in various automotive and maintenance applications, where there's often not very much space when you in the situations that you need to use a set of pliers. And you would be using a set like this because it already has very small jaws to get in those places. So it'd be nicer if just the rivet was a little bit higher up, just to give a little more compactness to the head. The rivet does seem like a decent size. Compared to the scale of the rivet, it would seem that if you were to, say, test these in a press until they failed, that it actually would break. The forging would actually, it wouldn't be the rivet that breaks, because the amount of steel here and here is less than the cross section of the rivet. So I'd actually assume that the handle would break off if you're in some type of crazy situation, or you maybe used a pair of vice grips on the handle of these pliers. I don't know why you would, but you may. Other than that, not a lot else to say about them. They did grind the top and the bottom, or actually all four sides, so at least they do look pretty decent. Feel they did do some deburring, but not very much. There's still some sharp edges, so they could do a little better job of that. Otherwise, the purchasers or something did some homework and actually came out with a particular set of pliers that really haven't been particularly common, at least in the stores. And then these things will be handy for just a variety of situations. Like I said, just like having a set of needle nose and you use them in needle nose situations, just getting a little bit more surface area than an actual true set of needle nose. And once again, wise choice to put wide handles. I'm glad manufacturers and companies are starting to heed decades of user requests of don't make the handles super thin because they're uncomfortable to hold and they pinch into you. Just give us a little bit more width and makes the whole tool a lot more usable. So anyway, that's my little review of these Doyle flat nose assembly pliers. Anyway, really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.